Games Workshop just got humbled as fans vote no with their hobby dollars. Not even 1 year into the new Warhammer Seasons, and Games Workshop's already pulling the plug. Welcome back to the channel, my friends. Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and today we're taking a look at how seasons are going 1 year in. This video is sponsored by CMO Games. More on that later. Alright, so here we are 1 year into the new Warhammer Seasons. Games Workshop has attempted to adopt the video game Seasons format, and their idea was to basically put out one big box game and then sell expansions throughout the year, structure it in quarters, have a themed season, and then at the end of that season, just do it all over again. This would allow them to sell one big box to the community to get everybody started with, and then additional expansions throughout the year. That way they could milk the fans for not just one big starter set, but 3 expansions as well. And if you're going to get people hooked and buying all the seasonal stuff, you might as well go big. So instead of doing just one big box and a few smaller expansions, Games Workshop went all in and did 4 big boxes, 1 starter set and 3 expansions. And the main difference being that the initial starter set came with the full rulebook, tokens, and dice, as where the expansions did not. And there was a small price difference between them as well. GW tried to go with this strategy for not only Warcry, but also Kill Team as well. And Kill Team saw a lot more success, as expected. However, Warcry appears to have fallen directly on its face, which is no surprise because that's exactly what I said when they announced this. My issue with this was it was essentially taking a small game that is a kind of entry-level game, getting people started into the hobby, and turning it into like a whale collection. So essentially, if you were into Warcry and wanted to collect it previously, there was 1 starter set at any given time that you could pick up, and then they had much smaller expansion sets available as well. So Games Workshop got the big brain idea, why sell you 1 big box and a couple small expansions when they can just sell you 4 big boxes per year. And I made a video about how Games Workshop's seasons were now going to cost about $1,000 to collect. And that's basically what it worked out to. The starter set was about $230, and then the 3 expansions that followed were $185 a piece, and then they were supposed to release some individual warbands and other stuff on the side. However, the terrain, the gnarl oak trees, weren't exactly the most popular, but most people hung on for at least part of the season because of all the hype behind the Seraphon crash spaceship, the Eye of Chotek. And looking forward to a cool Seraphon spaceship and crash ruins, we foot-slogged our way through 1 expansion box full of gnarl oak trees after another, until finally we all became disappointed because we had essentially gotten baited and switched. We went through an entire season, an entire year, 4 big box sets, and about $1,000 investment, and never got the Seraphon ruins, never got the temple that we expected. And we didn't even make it halfway through the season before people just stopped buying the big box set expansions. And now, as the first season wraps up and we get ready to jump in on the second season, those expansions are sitting on store shelves all over the world. And it's not uncommon to find discounts online or in person up to 50% off those sets. So rather than take a victory lap and pat ourselves on the back because exactly what we expected played out, let's talk about what Games Workshop is doing differently and how I feel about it. Because honestly, I think it's a good idea. They're basically going back to doing what they were doing before. So let's have a look. Scramble over the scales of Talaxis in this new Warcry terrain set. Terrain is at the heart of every game of Warcry. It's there for your fighters to scramble over, dodge behind, and most importantly, shove opponents off. As your warbands battle their merry way into the deepest groves of the Gnarlwood, they must contend with carnivorous gnarloaks and magical constructs shorn free of the crashed Seraphon void ship, the Eye of Chotek. Anyone who makes their way far enough into the ravening ruin will eventually stumble upon debris from the mighty vessel, slawed off like scales from some great cosmic reptile, and providing more cover and elevation to use in your blood brawls. So here we get our first peek at the new set right here. Very cool. We definitely see some of the Seraphon ruins that we have been really waiting to get to. Still not quite what we were expecting, but a little more Seraphon ruins and a little less gnarl oak, which I think is basically what everybody wanted this whole time. So does that mean Games Workshop has course corrected and now they're listening? Well, sort of. I think actually what happened is Games Workshop was getting ready to do Season 2 for Warcry and realized that Season 1 was a complete failure, so had to bust up the sets and rebox them, and now we're going to see the aftermath. And the truth is, I actually think it's probably a good idea, at least for them. Savage Lands, Scales of Talaxis is a brand new terrain set for Warcry, featuring 17 pieces of terrain, including more bestial Gurish flora and jade ruins, shaken loose from the Eye of Kotek. A brand new double-sided game board with swampy theme, scenery cards, and provide 12 suggested layouts and a Warcry token sheet. Alright, so this is exactly what they used to do. They used to have something called Warcry Ravaged Lands, and they were expansions that were about like $85. And they included the game board, the token sheet, and a bunch of terrain. And that looks like this is exactly what we're seeing here, which is awesome because those sets were cool. They were a little more affordable. And most importantly, they came with a token sheet, which previously was only ever offered in the starter set. So if everybody that plays Warcry needs one token sheet, that means everybody that plays Warcry would need to buy a starter set to get it, which is just not realistic. So having these expansion sets with the terrain, with the tokens, was a very cool idea. Now that being said, we do see some of the same patterns, some of the same issues that we saw last season already being replayed, in the sense that we see the scatter terrain duplicated once again. So it's very clear here, there are two of these, two of everything, essentially from this bottom portion. And what that means is this is just a scatter terrain sprue, and they include two of them. And then likely there's either 2 or 3 other sprues in the box that make up the large pieces. So once again, the redundancy of the scatter terrain was one of the main issues with this entire season. The first box came with 2 of the same sprue, and then each of the 3 other expansion boxes came with another one of that sprue. So if you collected the entire season, like I did, by the end, you had 5 of the exact same sprue. And that wasn't the only duplicated sprue in the set. You actually had 3 of 2 other larger sprues, and then other duplicates as well. But the idea that anybody would want 1 of the same sprue in every box, let alone 2 in the first box, and then another one in every other box, is absolutely idiotic. So that being said, I do like the set here, but again, the redundancy of the scatter terrain makes me think that Games Workshop hasn't necessarily learned. An arched starfire pylon dominates the set, largely intact and still coursing with mystical energies. Other elements of Seraphon architecture, including an idol of Matspota, a slan effigy with precious bamboo platforms built around it, a collection of stone ruins, walkways, shattered posts, and ancient jars of Quetzal. The depths of the gnarlwood are also home to the bowed elder gnarl oaks, senescent but still vicious plants with grasping branches often surrounded by thickets of razor-sharp gnarlbriar. This set makes the perfect addition to the hunter and the hunted, and can be added to any previous gnarlwood terrain set to increase the size and scope of your collection. New rules for fighting in enervating swamps that can be set alight by the crackling energy pulsing through the starfire portal. New rules for fighting in enervating swamps that can be set alight with crackling energy pulsing through the starfire pylon. Will also be free to download from Warhammer Community when Scales of Talaxis is made available to pre-order. Keep your eyes peeled for future Warcry releases right here. Alright, so I actually want to jump over to the Hunter and Hunted. Alright, so this set here was previewed at the Warhammer Nova show. And we could see here that this terrain piece and then also the fighters are in this new box. But I was able to spot actually some terrain that is not in the Warcry set previously. So we see like this lizard head on top of some of the bamboo stuff. And then we also see the kind of like arch of the ruin right here as well. So this gave me the impression when we look through this set here and see what is inside, it actually comes with just this one piece of terrain, which is very, very cool. Definitely a huge fan of the Ogre Maw Pit. And then also the 2 warbands as well. And then it comes with the Hunter and Hunted book. So Games Workshop is pretty particular about accidentally showing things off ahead of time. So it's pretty obvious that they either intended to show this stuff off or maybe made some late minute plans and didn't necessarily have an option. And my suspicion here is that Games Workshop has decided to course correct. They may still do the seasons thing, but rather than doing 1 big box starter set and then 3 big box expansion sets, it looks like they're going to be breaking these box sets down into multiple smaller box sets, which I think is a great idea, like they used to do it. So I think what happened here was this was originally going to be 1 big box set, which is the terrain expansion we just saw, and then this box set right here with the book, 2 warbands, and all the terrain. And instead, Games Workshop realized that these Warcry box sets this season is completely failing, and these things are flopping left and right, so they had to correct course. So I suspect that they reboxed half of the stuff, the warbands and 1 piece of terrain with a book, in this box right here, and that's the Hunter and Hunted set. And then they took the rest of the terrain right here and made that into the Savage Lands Scales of Talaxis set. Now, I don't know this for a fact, and honestly, it doesn't make a difference either way. If anything, I think it speaks more highly of Games Workshop that they realized the first season did not go well, and rather than just going forward with it for another season, they're at least trying something different, which I think is very important. Now a quick message from today's sponsor. CMO Games has been selling Games Workshop products online for over 20 years. They carry the full line of Games Workshop products, including Warhammer 40,000, Age of Sigmar, Necromunda, Blood Bowl, paint tools, and more. Almost all Games Workshop products are priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games takes pre-orders for most Games Workshop products released at their earliest date possible. 12:01 a.m. on Saturday, they go live. Most of these pre-order products are also priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games offer free shipping in the US 48 with an order of $50 or more. Their customer service is top-notch and they ship most orders within 24 hours. Visit CMOGames.com using the affiliate link in the description and let them know that you heard about CMO Games from Warhammer Man. Now back to the video. Now I'm not sure that this is going to completely change the game and suddenly like Warcry is going to be really popular and it's going to sell extremely well. I think a lot of times Games Workshop does irreparable damage to itself and to its games with a bad launch. And we see that directly with Necromunda Ash Waste. The box set was awesome, but it was priced horribly. There was a ton of excitement about the game and the vehicles and everybody wanting to get into it. And then all that excitement was completely killed by the $300 price tag. And since then, it's basically just fallen back off into the shadows. And now we're seeing essentially the same thing happening with Warcry. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Necromunda is awesome. It's one of my favorite campaigns I've ever played in. I also absolutely love Warcry. It's an amazing skirmish game and probably one of the best places to get new players, friends, family, etc. started, or at least to play a game with you. But the fact of the matter is, one of the beautiful things about Warcry is that you can start playing with miniatures you already have. You can pick up a specific miniature here or there and add them into your warband. And there was always some around $50 to $100 items that you could pick up to expand either the battlefield or jump into a new warband, etc. And I think Games Workshop trying to shift into the seasons and the big box model has really just burned out a lot of the community. Now, is it possible that if they put more of the Seraphon ruins in and didn't take a whole season just reprinting gnarl oak trees and the same scatter terrain, that Warcry could have been a success? Yeah, maybe. But honestly, I just don't think people were interested in spending $1,000 on Warcry specifically. I think most people, if they're trying to get into that, if they're trying to collect a game or get big into the hobby, they're going to go for one of the big box games. As where with Warcry and Kill Team, it's supposed to be like a smaller skirmish, more affordable price point, and that's just not how it worked out. So let me know what you think down below. You think that Games Workshop has course corrected and now they're going to try something a little different after the failure of the first season? Do you think this was planned all along and they just accidentally shared some pictures with all this stuff together? I always like to hear your guys' opinions. I personally really like this terrain. I really like the other set that we got shown as well. And if that was in a big box, I would definitely buy it. But I also bought the last 4 Warcry boxes as well. Even as we got towards the end of the season and I was disappointed by the terrain and the redundancy, I still picked it up. As where a lot of other people I know fell off about halfway through the season and just gave up on Warcry or at least the big box purchases. So special thanks to CMO Games for sponsoring the video. Check them out to save 15% on Games Workshop purchases. Link in the description. That's it for today. Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man. And I can't wait to get a hold of the new Warcry stuff. And I'm glad Games Workshop corrected course. And I'm out of here.